It's like kind of cool to imagine a situation where 5% of US companies were owned by their workers. It's like a great scenario that we can all work towards. So this panel is those of you who've been to our summits before know that we often have a panel which is journalists talking about their perception, who the business journalists are often kind of on the other side of a lot of these conversations and seeing from the outside and actually seeing into organizations and how they're telling their stories and the narratives that they have. And so that is this session, and I'm excited to be joined by Nikki Waller and Jamie Heller. You'll have to excuse us, this is a bit of a Wall Street Journal reunion on stage here. We all worked together at the Journal for a number of years directly, and you two are on the same team actually through the pandemic, I think, right? So Nikki is now at Bloomberg. She's managing editor for Equality, Money, and Management, and that includes overseeing coverage globally of how companies treat their people, pay, careers, leadership, policies that shape opportunity, in addition now to personal finance, money, investments, all that stuff, right?
Yes.
And then prior to that, she had a long stint at the Wall Street Journal where we worked together. And then Jamie is editor-in-chief of Business Insider, and that's a role that she's been in since 2024. Obviously, you all know Business Insider, the global newsroom focused on business tech, innovation, many other things, and then, of course, was at the Wall Street Journal before that. Jamie has a law degree and was actually one of the media pioneers of digital journalism at Smart Money and the Wall Street Journal, TheStreet.com. So I'm excited to have this conversation here about and your perspectives as newsroom leaders as well. Nikki, I'm going to start with you, and I have a question I've been thinking about since approximately 11:25 p.m. last night, which is your Michael Bloomberg had like incredible poise when he had one of the Knicks players land in his lap in the front row. Like, how did he do that?
Just, it's one of the many skills we inculcate into people at Bloomberg, being able to roll with the punches in the old way, and we like to sit
including right now.
That's right. We like to be in on the action.
Like to sit close to the scene. So let's to dive into the discussion. You wrote when you joined Bloomberg last year that conversations about equality, work, and leadership are reshaping how businesses operate. How would you situate employer brand in the many cross currents and priorities of corporate America at the moment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me to the Real Talk panel of the Charter Summit. And you know, here we are in 2026. Already, these questions of equality and work changed the way that businesses operated 5 years ago, and they've kind of started doing this again in the opposite direction. And HR departments, people who participate in employer brand, which is everywhere, like all the way up. I think what you guys have established today, this goes up all the way up and down the chain. Are dealing with so many questions, especially around AI. How will AI change the way that people work? How does it change what we want out of our employees and what employees want from us? But of all the executives we talk to, there's no one who says, we have all the great talent we need. There is still that need to have really great talent no matter what is changing in an industry and no matter whether the employer has a really upper hand, as we see in this moment. And so I think it's still a pretty high priority. It's a little bit more of a high wire, though, about how you talk about that.
So even as employers are talking less about talent and diversity and things like that, they actually recognize that they do need talent at the core, even as they feel pressure to automate with AI. They're still thinking about how they get the best players on their team.
Exactly. I think internally and externally, they still need to be known as a place for A players to keep their own employees engaged and ready for the next thing in a moment where they could be feeling a little bit of exhaustion with AI. And also that this is a place where people can succeed and get ahead, because I think we see a real hunger for movement internally and externally for talent.
Jamie, you've led teams of like very hard-hitting, very skeptical journalists at the Wall Street Journal, now Business Insider, over the years. What is a good employer brand? Like, what does a strong employer brand look like from the perspective of, from the outside perspective, and in particular, the perspective of a journalist, of an editor or a reporter?
Authenticity,
Yeah.
I would say is the number one thing. You can be Elon Musk, or you could be Alex Karp, and you could be hardcore, and you could be crazy, and but if you're straight with what you're all about, then I think it becomes more freedom of choice and more of a marketplace. So to me, I think that's the most important thing. If people are working, like right now in Silicon Valley with the AI rush, like a lot of places are working like 9-9-6 or 10-10-7. I mean, crazy, really intense hours, but.
And so that's 9 a.m., 9 p.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're upfront with what's expectations, I mean, it might or might not work out, but I think that's a lot better than any kind of bait and switch in either direction.
Yeah. So even if you are a demanding workforce, as long as people will choose that actually, if you're clear about it.
Yeah, they might really want it, and they might like it, and it might be what they're up for in their life right now.
Do any companies come to mind, like over the years, that have employer brands that actually stand out to you, or any companies whose employer brand was actually really poor?
You mean in that way?
Or just in general?
I mean, like Tesla.
Yeah.
I would say is there's no doubt if you go to Tesla, like what you're signing up for. Mm-hmm. That type of thing. I mean, even more recently, like Palantir and Anduril are very like upfront, and that they want to work with the military. They're excited to work with the U.S. military. Don't come here if that's not your bag.
Yeah. Nikki, what about you?
I would add to that, and this is again, we're going to talk our own book a little bit, but I think Anthropic is a really compelling brand in the market right now.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to tell that story. We just did a story about what it takes to get a job at Anthropic and how they recruit.
Which is culture fit.
Which is very much about culture fit, and that these questions about, it's not just what is your resume like, but it's also what is your moral compass, that they're trying to figure this out with employees. And they're hiring really fast. We had heard from some people that they're doing more than 20 interviews to get in the door.
Wow.
But they are very, it's a lot. And I don't think that's consistent for everybody, but it's what we heard from some applicants. But they're really thinking about who you are when they bring you in. And I think for some people and also the position that they've taken in the marketplace about what AI is supposed to be is really appealing to some people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking I think there is lots of research that shows that like you can't, interviews are not predictive of how people actually perform in the job. So we'll see how that plays out 3 years.
They're giving it their best shot.
For Anthropic, yeah. What do some companies actually pitch their stories to you, and maybe like Nikki, what is successful, like what resonates to you as a journalist who has had like lots of companies pitch the story of their culture and their brand and why they're unique and all these things, and like what actually do people get right or wrong about how they communicate? And
I think that anything that's really specific about what you're doing and how people are succeeding, here's how this promotion program works, and we will talk to you about how people get through it. That really helps. I think, and I'm sure Jamie can agree with all of her staff, but a lot of the pitches that you see are kind of existing at that jargon level. And I would say, if it's not something that you would share with someone in a group chat or with your best friend, like maybe it's not the right pitch for us. But if it's specific, if it's about, this is how we raised this group of people from this level to this, that's something we can get into, or talk about how you are facing it, like how you are solving a problem that all companies have. How did you get your teams to work faster? And then come back to us with specifics and a fair bit of candor. It's hard.
And in my experience, that sort of pitch is more successful, just to be like very tactical, from an executive, as opposed to, like, I can't remember getting a pitch like that from a comms person.
Often not true.
Yeah.
It usually comes from meetings with CHROs or CEOs who come through the newsroom and mention something that catches our eye.
Can I pick up on that? Which
please.
was when Nikki says candor, like the story's only going to be good, and we're really only going to run it if it's truly honest. Like most things just don't go swimmingly. Like usually there's some things that go wrong. So if you are opening your door to any kind of profile of a person or a program in your company, the story's going to be just better if you're just honest about what went wrong, how you fixed it. Sarah Needleman's been around here today, but she did a story on a woman at Match Group who, in this age of flattening management, went from, I think, 3 reports to 24, and how that went for her. And it was just honest. And they let her speak with us honestly, and that made for a great story.
And is there, like, obviously, and Sarah's a great reporter who's now a Business Insider, is also a Wall Street Journal alum. Is AI like in this conversation at all? Are you seeing that impact, like how people talk about their brands? Or Nikki alluded earlier to part of that, but how do you see that in this conversation?
In terms of pitching, or just like AI as part of the employer brand?
AI as part of the employer brand.
I mean, it just is for every company at this point. And I think it's tricky, and it's something that has been a challenge for me in my own newsroom. I think generally executives want employees who are open, willing to try, willing to experiment, eager to try, eager to learn. But at the same time, people are people, and they have concerns about AI, and they have concerns about it replacing them and humanity. And so trying to be empathetic to that while trying to encourage what you want, or in some cases, companies are making people do it. Like, everyone's taking a different tact. But to me, like, if both sides can give each other some grace, is probably the best outcome. But I think we're really in the throes of it right now across workplaces.
At Charter, we did some research over the last year about employer brand, and one of the things that stood out for me was people are looking for career growth. And in the context of AI, it meant, like, I want to work at a place where I'm going to learn how to use these tools. I'm going to learn how to prepare myself for the next chapter of my career. Does that sound like the sort of thing you're hearing as well? Yeah,
people want professional training. I feel the word training at this stage and where we are with AI is probably a little inapt. Like, how many of us ever knew about this? Like, who's the experts out there? Especially, like, each of us is trying to figure out how to use it in our own domain, whether that's law or medicine or journalism or manufacturing. So it's really learning by doing. We have, in Business Insider, we have a Friday morning training sessions, I think every week or every other week. And we get scores of people there, and it's very participatory. So I feel like learning, I don't know what's the perfect word, but training feels like a little premature.
Growth is actually something that people say.
And I think we're also seeing a bifurcation or a divide in the way that CEOs are talking about this, right? Like, we have now had CEOs who talk about, finance CEOs who have talked about their back office operations as a human assembly line. There's, of course, Standard Chartered with lower value human capital. These are not ways, maybe, to talk about AI, or at least there are ways that we will cover them, and you will get attention in a way you don't want. There are other CEOs who are saying, listen, we're bringing AI in. We are using it to grow the company. We're not using it to shrink the staff. And we've had some CEOs who have been talking about this, and this is what they're telling their own people, and I think they're going to start talking about it outside as well.
You both are leading teams of, what I would acknowledge are, like, often very, like, cranky, skeptical workers, i.e. journalists. Like, Nikki, maybe start with you. Like, what are some of your, like, best practices or things that have worked for you for building, in that context, building an employer brand?
I learned so many of them from Jamie, working together in the journal, and from you. These people have both been my boss at different times, and it has been awesome. But I would say,
Nikki was an amazing colleague.
I would say that newsrooms are this marketplace of ideas and talent. And as a team leader within a newsroom, you have to have your own employer brand kind of within that marketplace so that you get people excited about working with you and for you. And so you have the same responsibility that another leader of a unit does, to say, like, this is who we are, this is how we do things, not in a rigid way, but, like, these are the values that we bring to it, whether, especially with Jamie, standards, how we do this fairly, how we do it quickly. And really, when you're on a hot story or a hot topic, keep riding it. And then celebrate the successes of the people that you have. And I think if people know that they're going to be recognized, they're going to work hard, but they're going to do great stuff and be supported, I think that is a way to have a good employer brand within a newsroom.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've been talking all day about employer brand at the organizational level, and what you're talking about is at the team leader level. Basically, you have to do some of the same things to attract the best talent in an organization that is fluid and where that matters. Jamie, what about you? Like, what are the things that you found have worked best for
So we're
building
a
an employer
newsroom
brand?
in transformation. Business Insider used to be for the whole world, and now we're really trying to be more for people building their careers, businesses, and their investments. And so it's taken a lot of communication. I'm also new, so I do all hands almost definitely monthly, sometimes even more. Sometimes I share copies of what I talk about in the all hands. I take questions in advance so I could prepare them. Then I open up for questions live. I have office hours. At first I thought, oh, office hours, it's just like I don't have time to have office hours, but I decided to make time, and they're excellent. Like, just hearing from one particular individual, you always come away with a great insight. Playing off of what Nikki said, we created a channel in Slack called BI Props, where people could just compliment each other. I felt like I don't have enough time in the day to compliment all this great work, so we created this channel, and people all day are great scoop, great feature, great picture, and it's really fun. And then I'm on LinkedIn a lot, praising my folks' stuff in a way that like I think is important externally, but also internally.
Yeah.
So it's something I really work hard on, all these things. Like, it's a big part of my job is to recognize people, and in so doing, encourage the kind of work that we want.
And to make it the sort of place that people want to work at and recommend to their friends and family. So we've been talking today about the sort of through the framework of an employer shaping their employer brand and controlling it. And if you say the right things and have the right practices, then of course you have an amazing employer brand, and your Glassdoor ratings are 100 or whatever scale those are on. But like, as you both know, because you've been on kind of different sides of this, like, the reality is that we don't actually control our brands, or do we? Like, so that's my question, for you both. Like, does an employer really control their brand? Because there is Glassdoor where people write all sorts of nasty things about their employers. There are all sorts of opportunities for people to undermine, not to mention competitors, like undermine your brand. So what do you?
Ask CBS News right now, right?
Ask CBS News, yeah. Talking about 60 Minutes employer brand is definitely
it's having a rough go. And it's true that all the things, it has to be really frustrating in some ways. All the things that you're working on can be undone in a way by one employee who's very good at social media, who puts out something that's really compelling, whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah.
I think the way that you counter that is by being out there just as much and using your voice and not hiding. I think that's if we in the media are talking to you and we know who the company is, that helps us sort of put some proportion around all of this.
Yeah, communicating both internally and externally.
Yes.
Do you have any other thoughts?
Just whatever you're doing in your company, don't think of how it's going to look in the best light, the light that you see it in. Like, pretend you're a lawyer on the other side. Like, what is the worst case that someone's going to say about this, and how can you soften the edges? But also, then as long as you're confident and you have conviction in your decisions, then you own it. But just we really do live in a fishbowl, and we really every single move you make gets hyper analyzed, and so you can't let that paralyze you. But just think about it, move forward, and then own it.
Yeah, great. We're going to shift now for a few minutes. There are a few folks here who are going to react to some of the thoughts here or add their own questions. Do we start? I see Josh is right here. Do you want to kick it off?
Hi, I'm not going to stand. I don't want to put my back to everyone, but good to see you. Thanks for being here. I'm Josh Newman. I work for ServiceNow, building a skills and talent readiness practice within our people team. There's a few thoughts that I want to react to. I don't really have them in a coherent fashion. I just jumbled some thoughts. Nikki, you mentioned you started off saying you talk to a lot of leaders who don't feel like they have the right talent. So one of the things I'm thinking about, that's squarely in the realm of what we're trying to solve for within ServiceNow. I imagine a lot of people are thinking about this concept of readiness. I'm wondering if, one, they have a sense of what the right talent actually is in this moment, other than the platitudes of, we need curious people, we need people with empathy. Yes, those are all true, but is there a finer point on that they're thinking about? And I'll just throw out two other thoughts. One is around early in career talent. We just kicked off our intern program. I'm participating in a reverse mentorship cohort where I'm learning from a group of interns. They're very concerned about this moment. There's a bit of cynicism there, and also a sense of inevitability of where technology is taking work and workflows and tasks and careers. So on that point, I'm curious your thoughts on, as a news organization, as news organizations, what responsibilities do you feel in shaping the narrative that influences this next generation coming into white collar work, enterprise work in particular? And I'll leave it at that.
Maybe we'll,
yeah, I'll leave it at those two.
Do you want to start with the second one? Like, what is your responsibility in terms of shaping the narrative for young workers?
Yeah, and we've been here before, right? So if you remember, I think everyone here is old enough to remember the millennials and how there was a period of time where a lot of news organizations cover the millennials like this, and millennials like this, and millennials like to work like this. And
millennials are such slackers.
Millennials
right?
are slackers.
They never want to come to the office.
They're always whining. And, I was running
bit.
coverage of workplace at the Journal at the time, and, we kind of sat around and we were like, millennials just want what all the rest of us want in a workplace, which is like, they want to understand what their path is. They want to feel like they're compensated well. They are just saying it out loud while the rest of us suffered in silence. And so how could we do stories that would back up that view? And I think the same thing with entry level, right? I think it is very easy to get into this like doomsaying about entry level workers in the early stages of your careers. But then there are times like actually at this charter conference, the one that you had in February, where you had someone from IBM saying they were actually raising entry level hiring, and we jumped on that as news because we want to go where the facts are. We want to surprise people. And you're right, we don't want to fall into that narrative.
And then the first question was about talent. Like, how do you know what, like beyond hiring for curious people or that sort of thing? Jamie, do you have a thought on how you think about that?
Actually, in journalism, I keep looking for the same thing I'm looking for years.
Which is?
So, like, doggedness, carefulness, like competitiveness. Yes, curiosity, journalistic curiosity.
Yeah.
You got to be hungry for it. And so I'm always looking for proof of concept. Like, did you do this in high school? Did you do this in college? Like, don't just tell me you want to do it, but like show me that you've done it. It's very hard, and that you've done it and you want to keep doing it.
Great. Okay. Do we have another right here?
Thank you. Hi, Kit Krugman. I lead the people team at Foursquare. We used to be a consumer check-in app. We are now geospatial intelligence. I had a question. One of the things that I've been turning over in my head is the relationship between journalism and employee experience on the inside. So to use the example of what happened with Meta over the past couple of months, where some of the news that there would be cuts leaked into the press, and then they had 30 to 60 days of knowledge that there were going to be cuts. Yeah. I'm curious how you brief your teams and how you think about the interplay between journalism and worker experience and the impact on brand.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
I could take that because we do a lot of that at Business Insider, and I've got to say, we are very careful if we speak to a few people anonymously to not overrepresent those people's views as the views of like 70,000 people at a company. But at the same time, like you're trying to figure out what's going on inside of companies. So the more like we can see like letters that people are writing or Slack messages, that's more than just one person's opinion, and we just have to be very careful not to over-rotate on one person's opinion. On that Meta situation, I actually thought that the company handled it quite well to put out a note saying, I'm sorry to tell you we're gonna, I think it was 10,000 people are going to lose their jobs in a month, but it's leaking, so we want to tell you. And that's an example where I think, again, coming back to authenticity and transparency, like, got to like deal with the facts at hand, handle them responsibly, and probably they scored some points. And then Mark Zuckerberg came back and said, I know this wasn't great. I don't want this to happen again. Stability is important, which was pretty different from a year and a half ago, denigrating his workers as low performers.
Yeah, great. We have time for one more. Grace.
Hi, I'm Gregor Nelson. I'm the head of learning and development at Pure Insurance. And I'm just curious from your reporting if there's an instinct on employer brand that companies are still relying on, but that feels outdated now, or you feel like needs to emerge for this current moment, and what that is, and then what you would recommend companies do instead.
I didn't totally hear.
It's like a practice that's actually kind of outdated around employer brand that people think about. That like, is there anything people are doing that just feels like?
I feel like Matt Boyle, who is on our team who covers management, should come to the stage and just talk about all the pitches he gets that say the same thing that we've seen like 6 or 7 years ago. I think, again, we kind of come back to the jargon thing. I think if employers are talking about things that don't feel unique and specific, if you're kind of coming back on the same, like, well, we have these values. I mean, values are really important, but I think something that employers can do right now, and this kind of backs up to Josh's question as well, his initial question is, how is your company setting people up for success? For people who come into your company, do you help them figure out what their path is so that they are joining you for not a job but a career? I think we don't see enough of that. I think we hear a lot about like the first hiring and what we're looking for, but very few places that are road mapping their people. And that's what I think when you talk to workers, I'm sure this is the case for you guys too, when you talk to employees, that's what they're hungering for, is a sense on the employer brand front that like they just want to map.
Yeah.
And the companies that can talk about that are going to distinguish themselves.
Yeah. I would say, like, just to quickly respond to that too, the thing that I think Katie said it early this morning, she talked about certainty and how like you can't promise people certainty given the future uncertainty around jobs in the age of AI and everything else. And so I would say an outdated thing would be to promise people a very specific career ladder that you probably can't promise them. And so what you can promise them is something like growth. You can like you're going to come here and we're going to make you better worker. You're going to grow through this opportunity, even if I can't tell you 3 years from now that your job description is going to be identical, or it's going to be in some kind of logical sequence of progression that probably, like, I don't know, 30 years ago might have been easier to imagine. So we're just out of time. Thanks for these great questions, and thank you to Jamie Heller, Editor-in-Chief of Business Insider, and Nikki Waller, Managing Editor of Bloomberg. We're almost to the end here, and I'm going to invite up Marcella Dukley, my colleague who's the head of Workplace Innovation at Charter.